All right. I believe
We
we are
are live.
live. Thank you. Okay. Well, welcome everybody to the May 2022 meeting of the Asheville Urban Forestry Commission. We will start off with introductions, beginning with our commission members. So my name's Amy Smith. I'm the chair of the UFC. And I'll just kind of call around the room here. Dawn?
Hi, I'm Dawn Chavez from Asheville Greenworks. I'm the vice chair of the UFC.
And Zoe?
Zoe Hoyle, member UFC.
Thank you. And Ed?
Ed Macy, Urban Forestry Commission.
And Patrick?
Patrick Gilbert, Urban Forestry Commission.
Okay, and so as of right now, absent are Urban Forestry Commission members Cecil Bothwell, Perrin DeYoung, and Sharon Summerall. But we still have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and introduce the rest of the staff and guests. So Haley?
I'm Haley Mahoney. I'm a planning technician with Development Services Department and an assistant to the Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you. Nancy?
Hi, I'm Nancy Watford. I am the Stormwater Supervisor, DSD, and staff liaison to Urban Forestry Commission.
Thank you. And let's see, I see Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Blevins, Urban Planner with the Development Services Department.
Thank you. And Ricky?
Ricky with the zoning section, DSD.
Thank you. Mark?
Mark Foster, City Arborist, Public Works Department.
Great. And Jade?
And Jade Dundas, Capital Projects Director.
Thanks for being here. And so I believe everybody else is here for alternative compliance, but if you want to introduce yourself, I see John Cox.
This is John Cox representing the Biltmore Square property.
Thank you. And Benjamin Munn.
This is Benjamin Munn with Civil Design Concepts.
Hi. And John Spake.
Hi, John Spake with Spake Real Estate on the Brevard Road project.
All right. I think I got everybody. Speak up if I missed anyone. I think that's all of us. All right. So we'll call the meeting to order and have approval of the minutes of the last meeting that are linked in the agenda. So we'll do a roll call vote. I'll go through in the order I have it here on the agenda. So first a motion and second to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Ed. All right, Dawn.
Aye.
Ed.
Aye.
Zoe.
Aye.
Patrick.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the minutes are approved. We'll move right on to alternative compliance requests and presentations. So I have first 39 Patton Avenue, if that one's ready. Jennifer, is that you? You're on mute.
I am.
All right, thank you. So whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and introduce it.
We did a mic check. Can you hear me?
Now I can, yes.
Okay, great. I'm not sure. Ben, are you here for this project?
I am.
Okay, great. I didn't review the project, so I wasn't sure who the applicant was in this case. This is for 39 Patton Avenue, which actually has a second address because it's got two street frontages. The other address on College Street. And they're renovating the existing building, which does require compliance with the street tree standard. And each of the two street frontages would require one large maturing tree. There's an existing large mature tree and a sidewalk tree pit on the Patton Avenue side, and there's no tree on the College Street side. The applicant is requesting relief from the required tree on the College Street side due to an abundance of underground utilities. And on the Patton Avenue side, there is a mature tree. You can see it behind that barricade there. I don't know how long it's been there, but it's in a pit with no grate. And as a result, there are a fairly large number of roots that are above the ground. So they're also seeking relief from having to install a grate over those roots. I don't really know how it would be accomplished. I guess they'd have to shave those roots off, which could very likely damage or even kill the tree, I think. That's all I have. If the applicant wants to add any more, if I missed anything, I am open for questions or suggestions from the commission.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Did the applicant want to say anything before we have discussion?
She covered it pretty well. The existing tree is generally where it should be as far as compliance goes, but she's right, the roots are significantly higher than the sidewalk. And if we were to try to install a grate, more than likely would kill the tree. And then on the other side, there's probably a dozen utilities running through there, excluding the one we're trying to snake through there to add fire suppression to the building.
Okay, thank you. Do any commission members have questions? Go ahead, Ed. You're on mute, Ed.
Could we go back to the slide with the photograph of the tree? It's really hard to tell, but is the tree pit surrounded by brick pavers that are raised a little bit? Concrete. Is it poured concrete? Is it a monolithic piece that goes all the way around the tree?
It's either monolithic or multi-sections.
Multi-sections. I mean, the one comment I had was, is it feasible? And I could see how it's impossible to put a grate there, but is it possible to enlarge the size of the pit? Like pulling up that concrete, removing some of the pavers, and then adding concrete back or something.
To answer your question, we are required to replace that section of sidewalk. So that is possible, but we can't narrow that sidewalk much.
Right.
It could possibly get
more of a linear enlargement
along the road.
Yeah, if you can add another couple of feet on each side, I think it would be better for the tree.
Okay.
But it's nice that there's that separation with the concrete to prevent trip hazards in lieu of a grate. I don't have any further questions.
All right, thank you. I think, or I would say that it's good to have the existing mature tree, and everything you can do to preserve it during construction would be great. And I like Ed's idea of expanding the tree pit if possible along the road frontage. And if there aren't any more questions, raise your hand if there are. Otherwise, we just need a motion and a second. Oh, Mark, did you have?
Yeah, I do actually have a question about what's the proposed construction design solution to meet Ed's question. Would it be something like around the corner on Haywood, where you have the larger open tree pits with a little fence around it or something? That would seem like the most feasible and cost effective.
Sure. I mean, that seems simple to me.
We also need to do public comment prior to a vote as well.
Is there any public comment for this before we vote?
We have one caller on the line. Let me see if they'd like to do public comment. Caller on the line, if you would like to make public comment, please tap *3 to enter the speaker queue now. All right, I'm not seeing them try to enter the speaker queue, so I think we are safe to move forward.
Okay, thanks. So Patrick, sorry to cut you off. You can go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm fine.
Well, no, that was it. If you were ready, you can make the motion.
Yeah, I would move to approve the alternative compliance with the suggestion that Ed Macy made to expand the tree pit area for that one large mature tree.
Second.
And Ed second. So we'll go ahead and vote. Dawn?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Zoe,
Aye.
Patrick,
Aye.
and I vote aye. And just to be clear to our applicant, that's just a suggestion. So as long as you're meeting city requirements, that's the minimum. We're just offering a suggestion to improve the health of the tree.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely make sure that it'll fit, but since we're replacing the sidewalk, I think we can accommodate that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So next we have 980 Brevard Road. So I guess, Ricky, were you going to run us through this one?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Chair. So again, like you said, Biltmore Square, it's the former Kmart location on Brevard Road near the Asheville Outlets that is now recently been reopened as the at-home store. So as part of that building work, they were required by building code to bring the ADA parking spaces into compliance. So if you remember the Kmart, it was almost like a slope or it fell away from the building pretty steeply out the front door. So the state building code required them to kind of level that up. And then talking to the applicants here, the original plan or the previous owner, the owner was going to like bring in asphalt and kind of level up that, but they wound up going in, their subcontractor kind of went in and decided to dig up the asphalt. And when they dug up the asphalt, that demolition triggered an area of site compliance. And so we made a site visit out there. Myself and Miss Watford made a site visit, and yep, they had removed the asphalt and a lot of the sub base. So that's the requirement that we have in front of us. So what Mr. Spake and Mr. Cox had proposed is instead of kind of concentrating all these trees, kind of clustering them up in the very front of the parking lot, they want to distribute that out across that giant area of asphalt more evenly distributed. And I'll kind of go through. So the code required planting of 15 trees and 61 shrubs in that disturbed area. So they're planning to still plant that amount or better. So they're showing 16 trees and 74 shrubs. I think the biggest thing is deviation is the 60 feet from a trunk of a tree. And so if you'll move next slide, Haley, for me. You can go ahead and advance some more again for me, please. Okay, so here's the proposed site plan. So Mr. Cox did draw circles for us, and you'll see some places where there's gaps in there. And so that's 60-foot rings. So basically the modification here is to allow that spacing of the trees to be more evenly spread out across the parking lot asphalt area. There would be areas larger than 60 feet from the trunk of the tree. The majority of the work that actually occurred is in this upper center of the project, where you see the ADA parking. That was kind of that, what was, I think I heard was a pitcher's mound almost created. They had to kind of level out in that area. So the ADA spaces were the reason why it was demoed. Well, not really, but that's what happened. And then also note on the far left here, there is a row of parking next to Ridgefield. There's actually a 24-inch stormwater pipe that runs right at the back of that curb line, just right underneath those parking spaces all the way down. And so planting in that area as well can be compromised. And talking with Ms. Watford, you don't want trees planted directly upon stormwater pipes. And anyway, next slide, please. And so here's an aerial photo. It shows you that to the north plan, or in the upper part of the frame, that's the existing landscaping material. There's a mixture of shrubs and street trees along Ridgefield. There's some parking lot landscaping in the left of the frame that kind of comes in that one drive aisle. That's the former rise in the far left corner. So there's that one drive aisle. And so Mr. Spake and Mr. Cox are proposing to spread out the trees in this kind of upper two-thirds of this parking lot, if I'm correct here. again, mentions the 24-inch stormwater culvert on that northern, or in this case, the upper part of the frame running left to right. And again, I said, okay, here's your public discussion comments. Hopefully, Amy, I've kind of covered what the gist of the request is. The applicant might have a little bit more information or further explanation about what they're trying to do and how they wound up here at this point.
All right, great. Thank you, Ricky. Did the applicant want to add anything before we discuss?
I don't think I have anything to add. This is John, but I'd be glad to answer any questions of how we got here. And, you know, we can meet code, I guess, by pushing it all to that front corner. We just thought that it would look strange to put that many trees in that one corner of the parking lot, and would look a lot better and serve the parking lot better if we sort of spread that out. So I'll be here if you have any questions for me.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or discussion from the commission? Dawn, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I like this plan of spreading out the trees. There, with the species list that you have yeah, thank you. I'm not a plant expert, but euonymus is not a great species. It's not on the recommended species list. And I didn't see the Nandina domestica on there either. I'm not sure what that, I'm not familiar with that plant, but I would recommend looking at the recommended species list or getting some advice on trees and shrubs that are on that list.
Okay, no problem. We'd be glad to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn. Anyone else? All right, well then, is there any public comment for this project?
Speaker on the line, if you'd like to speak for this alternative compliance case, please tap *3. Okay, I think we're all right to move forward.
All right. Well, then if there are not any other questions or discussion for the applicant, we just need a motion.
I move to approve this alternative compliance request.
And a second.
I'll second.
I think Ed got in there first. We'll go ahead and vote. Dawn?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Zoe?
Aye.
And Patrick?
Aye.
And I vote aye. All right. Well, thank you very much for being here and for
Thank you.
your request.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, moving right along. Next is general public comment. So Haley, if you want to try again.
Caller on the line, if you'd like to make any general public comment for the alternative, for the Urban Forestry Commission, please press *3 now. All right. Appears they have exited the meeting, so I think we are okay to move forward.
Okay, thank you. I noticed while we were going through alternative compliance, we had a couple folks join us. So if you want to introduce yourselves, Kim Roney? If you're able to. I know sometimes she's out and about. There we go.
Good afternoon. Glad to be here with y'all today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Vidila? Okay, might be behind the scenes. All right, well then, moving on, we have a presentation from Capital Projects, an update on current projects from Jade. So I'll let you go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Amy. Again, my name is Jade Dundas, Capital Projects Director, and I really don't have a formal presentation. We went to council last Tuesday and shared our upcoming the work that's remaining on the bond sidewalk effort. So essentially in 2016, we had a bond referendum passed and established 7 years for us to complete work that was identified $74 million worth of GO bond work. And a lot of that work was sidewalks. Unfortunately for us, the approval processes associated with sidewalks have been a little bit challenging in some circumstances. Every time we deal with the railroad, and a couple projects have had railroad crossings, and then also a lot of DOT coordination, which is great and certainly appropriate. But it's one of those things that has required us to extend our time frame a little bit on the sidewalks more than we wanted to. But those projects, two of which you have been involved with, and I want to say I appreciate your involvement and your willingness to hear staff with the information on these projects repeatedly, and then also be helpful in trying to work through some of the challenges associated with those projects. Those being Vermont Street very specifically. And then also Newhaw Creek sidewalk, which is a long project. It's a mile-long project in the Haw Creek area, and it will have a fairly significant impact on that tree, on that canopy along the roadway there. As you're probably aware, it's a very tight right-of-way. There's steep slopes on both sides, which make it increasingly challenging. So there will be some property impacts there. But we have working with staff and over the years have brought projects before the commission and had a lot of feedback, a lot of opportunity to take that feedback and incorporate it into our design efforts. And really just wanted to take the time today to introduce myself to this group, to express the appreciation for the work that we've done and the work that we'll continue to do. And then also just open up an opportunity for feedback with regard to how we can work with this group in the future, and then also guidance for staff on that. So again, like I said, I didn't want to burden everybody with a presentation. I can certainly show the sidewalks, the GeoBond sidewalks presentation. Most of the projects that we have in there are relatively free of impact to the tree canopy. There will be some impact on most of the projects, but those two that I highlighted are the most significant. So with that, I'm happy to open it up for any questions or comments or thoughts, and try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. Well, I'll kick it off and say that we have certainly been happy to work with your staff on the Vermont Avenue and Newhaw Creek projects, and look forward to continued cooperation. I think having the open lines of communication has been the key, just, keeping everybody in the loop. It's been very nice. So I will open it up to the other commission members. Anybody has a question or comment? Looks like we're all good. Yeah, I appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I encourage you, if there's any question that comes up, project specific or general, just reach out to us. We're flexible to be able to get on any upcoming meeting agendas. So we're always happy to answer questions about our project.
Thank you so much.
Thanks all.
Thanks. All right. So next on the agenda are the staff reports. And so Mark submitted his report here. We can read through it. Do you have any highlights, Mark, or does anybody have questions for Mark?
No, nothing really to add. Any
right,
questions?
Nope. All right. We'll keep you posted if we end up with questions for you.
All right.
All right. Next is the Dsc Tpo report. So we can see in the chart where we're at with canopy metrics and fee in lieu for projects. There has been some additions here since the last meeting, it looks to me. I don't know if anybody has any questions for Nancy. I will say that I started, we talked previously about sort of a wish list of expanding these metrics so we can see a little more data associated with the ordinance. And I've been circulating that around to get feedback. So I guess Nancy, heads up, we have our list almost ready. So we'll work through it. We understand that there's some technical pieces to that, but we'll get the list to you in just It's labeled a wish list, so it's what we would hope to see. And we understand if it's not entirely possible. Any questions on the metrics? You guys are an easy group today. All right. We'll move on to old business. So our working groups have been working behind the scenes. So starting off with the policy working group, I don't know, Ed, if you want to start, or I can give a little summary.
Go ahead, Amy.
Okay.
Sorry.
I thought that's what you're saying. Okay. Well, so let's see. Since our last meeting, we met, or I guess I met as a representative with some city staff members just to kind of talk through what can the next steps be in some of our policy goals and revisions. As a nice productive meeting, I'm hoping to set up sort of a repeat with more of the working group members and city staff so we can specifically keep working on revisions to the ordinance 719 and continue with the chapter 20 work that has been started, and maybe create a timeline at least of where we might be able to go with getting that implemented. The big thing to keep in mind for this group and for others that are here as representatives, that chapter does require some more collaboration. It's not just a development services impact. So we do need to make sure that we're working beyond and reaching out to city staff that would be impacted through other departments. So that's one piece that we're working on. What else with the policy working group? Is there any update on the standards and specs?
Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah. I don't know if this falls within the policy working group, but there had been some previous discussions about having Duke Energy come to our meetings to discuss issues related to tree pruning. And I thought you were going to reach out to you and perhaps Ben Woody were going to reach out to someone from Duke Energy. Could you give us an update on that?
Yeah, thank you. So I did reach out through Ben, and Ben copied me on his outreach to Duke. And as far as maybe last week, he had not heard back yet. So I know that Ben is out of town at a conference. So when he gets back, we'll be able to touch base on that again. So that's ongoing. It's definitely in my list of things to follow up on. Just haven't heard back from them yet. So we're gonna keep trying. We've talked as a group about, do we keep trying to get them to come, or do we, kind of write them out of the group, so to speak, or even officially? I think the consensus has been to keep them involved if we can. So I think that's the path I'm going to keep pushing for, is that, the more collaboration, the better. And having someone here would be better than not. So we're going to keep trying.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so Ed, that's what I was asking then, with the policy working group, are there any updates on the standards and specs of the planting manual? I can't remember what we're calling it.
Yeah, the landscape standards and specifications. We had our 21st meeting this last Thursday, and pretty much mundane stuff. One thing that did come out that we're going to talk about in a few minutes is the recommended species list. But we still have, I don't think our work's done. We're still going to work at least through a couple more sessions. And Vidil is doing some analysis now, taking some actual projects and looking at the implications of some of the recommendations that we're making with respect to building impact trees and parking lot trees and spacing and things like that. So we're down to the nuts and bolts, just trying to see what the stuff that we've been talking about is going to look like.
Cool. Sounds good. Patrick?
Yeah, Ed, did the task force ever resolve the soil amounts for trees particularly in the downtown area?
We are definitely working with soil volume numbers, and I wouldn't say we have the absolute answer yet, but we're very close. And that's about all I can say. We're close. I mean, there's been some back and forth. Naturally, we want more, and cities trying to work with less if they can, because there's concern that too much soil volume costs too much money, and it's too difficult in some situations. But our position has always been more is better with respect to soil volume, and other people do it, so we can too, or other cities do it, and we can too. So we're working through it.
So the issue with the city is that I guess it would be Public Works doesn't have the money in their budget to increase soil volumes.
No, I think the real issue is that, you don't know what something looks like until you do it. And it's sort of a concern that, with a dramatic increase in soil volume, it's going to make things more difficult. It's going to make things more expensive. It's just too demanding. But so there's no real numbers behind the concerns. It's just really a concern for the unknown, in my opinion.
Has there been any discussion about any acceptable alternatives to larger soil volumes and to protect the health of either existing trees or trees that would be planted in the future?
Yeah, we're talking about suspended pavement systems as alternatives to current design approaches. So, you do the same old thing the same old way time and time again, and you get the same results, which for us is not acceptable. So we have to do things a little bit differently. So we are having those conversations.
Would that suspended system require a UDO change?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that. We'll have to ask Vidila.
This is Vidila. In the landscape code, we're suggesting language that states there are minimum soil volumes, and those can be met with suspended systems. So, for example, imagine a parking lot tree with an island. The island may be big enough that there's no need to suspend pavement over the island. But in some situations, they may want more parking. And in those situations, they can pave over part of it, and then they would be using a suspended paving system.
Okay. Thank you both for that explanation.
Since, Amy, we're on this subject, can we jump the agenda and talk about the recommended species list at this time? It's a pretty quick item.
I think we can, since it is tying in.
Yeah, it just makes sense.
So we'll go ahead and adjust it unless there's an objection. So go ahead and, because it came directly out of this work from the landscape.
Right. And the reason I have it on the agenda, and there's a link to the list, is that through our discussions, we've decided to add another column to the recommended species list that will specifically identify trees that are not appropriate for use in parking lots because of the parking lot environment. So if you take a look at the list, you'll see a column that's highlighted in yellow that has for some of the species, it has the word no. Guillermo worked through that list and based on his experience, identified the trees that just don't perform well in parking lots. And what we're going to do in the future is exclude those trees. So when the city's reviewing plans and one of those species are in the parking lot, it would be a red line to revise the plan. So if you all can take a look at that, and if you have, I know earlier Dawn mentioned some shrubs that she was wondering if it was appropriate. Those were shrub species, but there might be trees too that aren't. So if you all can take a look at it, if you have any comments, let me know, and I'll get it back to Vidila so we can make that change.
All right. And so that everybody knows, the link in the agenda should be live. So when you link through the meeting documents, in the meeting documents as well, and you can link directly from the agenda, it should come up. So go ahead, Zoe.
Correct.
I was just wondering if there is one non-native invasive species plant list from a specific organization that we could refer to when talking about things like these shrubs, because most of those shrubs are on most of those lists, the ones that we talked about in the plan presented today. The euonymus and the nandina.
So do we know, so the recommended species list is the yes list.
Right.
Are we also maybe identifying a no list?
Yeah, just one they can refer to.
So I don't know, Ed, if that's been discussed as far as, banning, I know you said specifically for parking lot trees, but for other invasive species perhaps?
Yeah, we did pass a resolution to prohibit the use of non-native invasive species last year, did we not?
I believe that was only on public lands. That wasn't all development projects. That was just public projects.
Correct. I don't think it would be hard to assemble a list of non-native invasive species. It would just take some work. The list of invasive species is out there. Jim Miller's work with the Forest Service, probably could, he's got the most comprehensive list of anybody. It would just be a matter of pulling out some of the ones that are commonly used in this area and having another no list, I guess.
Ed, if I can chime in the section that we're working on, we included, I think this was recommended by Mark, the latest guide to a field guide for the identification of invasive plants in southern forests.
Yeah, that's Jim Miller's publication. Yes.
So that's in the UDO, and maybe we add that to the top of this appropriate species list as a cross-reference.
That's probably not a bad idea. And just to shortcut the whole process, just say species listed in this publication are not allowable in planting, for permit approval.
Ricky, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't we have a policy where we don't allow invasive species to count for zoning credits? And that we...
I'd have to put my hands on the policy, but that's what I've heard in the past. Like we wouldn't count like Bradford pears for tree canopy preservation.
Right.
Because that's something we would not want to, or kudzu for any type of ground cover.
Yeah, I think there's some that are more gray area, like the nandina may not
gray
show
at all.
up.
Yeah.
Well, but it may not show up on that kind of list, whereas it would be on the one that you're referring to,
right,
to attach it. So I think the clarity would be helpful, so if we're questioning it, we need some way to make it clear through the planting standards. So
in the landscaping code, the sentence before the one I read says no credit will be given to invasive or exotic species as identified in the latest edition of a field guide for invasives in southern forests.
And so does that apply for these development projects? I'm just wondering, so how did it show up on like the project we just looked at, for example?
Well, this is the code in the landscape section. So any landscaping that's required as part of development, that's what this refers to. Is that right, Ricky?
Yeah, I did do the review on this one detailed. We'll go back through and catch that, but I'll just tell you the truth. I'm not familiar with all these smaller plants like this. There's the recommended species list that points you in a direction to go to, but it's not a required list. So it's recommended. I'll just say that I'm not a plant person like this group is, and Miss Watford's a really good resource for us in the office because she's a landscape architect. I'm a planner. So that's why it's always good having a diverse group of people involved with stuff.
We also have this publication in our lobby.
So in this case, it
We
might
have
have been
copies for people.
an oversight, but it should not have been allowed. Okay, Dawn, go ahead.
Well, when we're talking about those species that can't be used towards the canopy requirements, shrubs are not counted towards the canopy requirement anyway, so they wouldn't show up, like euonymus wouldn't show up on as something that people can't use unless they're looking at the recommended species list or the non-native species. So yeah, there's some loopholes or cracks in the system that people are going to fall through. Not necessarily loopholes they'll exploit, but yeah, it's an honest mistake if it's not glaring, like don't use this species.
Yeah, I think that's something to keep in mind, though, is that, yeah, the trees are going to be a little more obvious because it's checked more. But I do think we might as well, if we're creating these landscape standards, include the shrubs because they're just as problematic overall. So, Patrick?
Yes, this might be a question for Videla, but if invasive species is mentioned in the UDO, does that mean that they cannot be used? Or is this just a recommendation that they not be used? I'm a little concerned about the difference in the definition between recommended and required.
It's my understanding that you can't use invasives. First of all, it's clear that it says no credit will be given to invasives. So you can't try to preserve a large invasive tree, for example. So, by extension, I don't think it wouldn't make sense that we would permit invasives in any way for meeting landscape requirements. But having said that, we should just make sure that the code is clear, so we're not assuming anything. And then I think to cross-reference it back to the appropriate species list so that it's doubly clear.
I agree, that makes sense. Go ahead, Ed. You're on mute, Ed.
I wanted to point out a subtlety in Vidila's language. Using the term appropriate species list instead of recommended species list is a direction that we're moving, which was part of our discussions as a group as well, right? Because we do want to use appropriate species, and that alternative compliance project, even though these aren't trees that we're talking about, they are required shrubs for that project. And we shouldn't accept the Nandina, for example, or give them credit for those Nandina. They have to change those shrubs out.
Right. Patrick?
So if we're coming up with a list of, quote, recommended species for different situations, whether they be street trees, building impact trees, parking lot trees, and I'm assuming based on what I saw earlier of this list, there's a range of species that can be used to fit each situation. Why can't that list be called a required species list as opposed to recommended, which means we're recommending this, but you all decide what you want to do.
Ed, go ahead.
We've had that discussion, and some of the design folks that are on our group don't want to be limited by, design by default, design by requirement, that there are some species that they want to use that we may not have thought of or that are relatively new or worth trying. And so we kind of fell on the term of appropriate species list instead of required, just to allow that design flexibility. It's just that, from a municipal perspective, you can't anticipate anything that a landscape architect might come up with. And there are situations that may predicate some alternatives to what's recommended. So we thought the term appropriate was probably better suited to what we need.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right. Next, I think was Nancy. Nancy, you're on mute.
Oh, thanks. I was thinking it's recommended because if we don't update it frequently enough to keep up with the nursery industry, I know that there are a number of columnar versions that aren't on there. And, so, and that, I mean, we could update it more regularly, but I think that adds that flexibility too, in not requiring this group to update it as regularly as that. But
that makes sense. And there could be new varieties or hybrids that might be appropriate, but may not necessarily be on the list. I think next was Vidilla.
Just to piggyback on that a little bit more, also nurseries don't always have everything in stock. So by requiring certain trees, it may be really limiting. And our thought on prohibiting at least parking lot certain varieties is a better way to just ensure that the trees that we don't want are not being planted, and then giving more flexibility. And by the way, most of those prohibited list trees for parking are pine or evergreen, and river birch is on there also. I know that's a kind of a pet peeve of mine, but it seems like that's a big tree that is planted now in a lot of shopping areas, and it doesn't really provide much canopy. So that was some of the thinking behind that.
Thank you. Ed, did you still have your hand was up? So, okay, you're good. Okay. Any other questions or comments about the recommended species list? All right, well, thank you, Ed, for your work on the landscaping standards, and Vidilla as well. Sounds like you're all heading in the right direction, so appreciate it. Okay, next is the budget request working group. So this is our work to help try to get on staff a urban forester and approve the budgeting for a urban forest master plan. And I had to look at my calendar. It's been a whirlwind, but it was since our last meeting. I was actually able to set up meetings with 3 city council members. A couple responded. For example, Sage Turner responded. She had already seen the presentation that we gave, that I gave to Stacy, and she didn't have any further questions, so she declined another one-on-one. But we did meet with Mayor Mannheimer, Chairwoman Gwen Whistler, and Chairwoman Antoinette Mosley. And all the meetings were good and productive. It's not as simple as, persuading city council members to vote on light items. The budget is a more complex thing. They're not necessarily voting at the council level to pick and choose details. It's more of a supporting overall themes and ideas. And so, pretty much everyone we've talked to supports our general ideas, that nobody's saying no to environmental preservation and canopy enhancement and coordinating more on city staff and things like that. So I've been working also behind the scenes, just talking to Ben Woody to just try to get more information about how this process works so that we are putting our efforts in as effectively as we can. But it is moving forward. So I know, Kim, you just came on. I don't know if you have anything more you can provide as far as background.
Sure. So at our budget work session on April 6th, council did have a presentation from staff that included examples of new funding requests. If you go to ashevillec.gov and on government and then city council agendas, in the last agenda, you'll see up city council budget work session, and you can click on the presentation there. That's the document that I'm referring to. It includes items like code purple sheltering, software that's needed. Traffic engineering and urban forester it is currently under the designation for the city council strategic under neighborhoods. Neighborhood resilience is the one that is referred to there. What is not on this list and was addressed by council is number one, Joe et al., our strategic priority of reparations also doesn't have a line item for reparations funding. So that was a conversation that was had across the council dais, and also will be part of the next steps. So this was the last budget work sessions for council in this cycle. The next public document see of the budget process will be the city manager's draft budget. But this time that I've seen the urban forester at this level of the budget process. So thanks would go to the city staff that you liaisons and Ben Woody's team for elevating this quest. And certainly to the Urban Forestry Commission and SAC, your support has been loud and clear.
Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess a question to Kim. You seem to say that the next step would be the city manager's budget as presented to the council. If the urban forester funding were not part of that city manager's budget, how hard would it be, or is it even feasible for the council to restore that to the final budget that it approves?
So one public engagement or public comment for our process, and that's right before the city's vote. I can pull that up here in a minute unless Jeff has the timeline. As far as a leveraging point, I think it's exactly the right time to say thank you for it being in this point of the process and to continue to support and to assume support. I also would say myself that restoring and maintaining our tree canopy is an important of restoring neighborhoods that have been divested from. It's possible that this goes beyond neighborhood resiliency. And if we got to a point where it was removed from the draft budget, that would be a good time to plan for public. Anything that you see in the city manager's draft budget that isn't yet there.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anything else?
Well, I think that then that the budget working group needs to be prepared to come up with some kind of plan of action in case the funding for particularly the urban forester as well as the urban forest master plan does not find its way into the city manager's budget.
I agree. Kim, go ahead.
I'll share just as a point of sharing, in the past 8 years of budget cycles that I have seen groups prepare to speak in public comment to gather support for an issue, say like support for wage. And so because a group was organized already to say thank you, support, that can be a way to also an issue and that you care very much about to ensure that it stays on the.
I'm sorry, Kim, for me, your audio went out a little bit. Are you saying you said public comment like at city council meetings? Okay.
There will, I'm pulling up the date now, but there is an opportunity to explain public comment in the city manager's proposed budget process.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I will echo what Patrick said. It sounds like the budget working group should be meeting and ready. And I believe that group does not include me. It's Patrick, Ed, Dawn, and Cecil. And so if y'all can just loop me in though, and if you would like me to, as the chair, send any messages or anything like that, I'm happy to do so. And then when we get the date, we'll just be ready for more comment and push. Sorry, Kim, go ahead.
So in that same presentation, once ashevillec.gov, government, city council agenda, and then at the top presentation for the last work session. And the slide, of course, it doesn't have a number right now, about halfway through, it has a 53 city council budget timeline. And so the proposed budget is planned to public on May 24th. That'll be presented to council during the council meeting. June 14th is the public hearing, and we're scheduled to adopt the budget on 8th. The city budget has to be adopted by council by June 30th, right up against the wire.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, anything else on the budget request? All right, thank you. Next is the fee and lieu working group, which is myself and Ed and Zoe. And we have not met again. We did set up some folders to share information. Obviously, last month was when we passed the recommendation that the city support the Ravenscroft Reserve Initiative and work to, in some way, purchase that parcel as a preserve. So we will continue to meet and discuss action forward. Our goal with that group is to set up what we think might be a good framework for how to decide how fee and lieu money is spent so that we can bring that to city staff and city council as a way to help with ideas for setting up that framework and being involved in those decisions. So anything else from Ed or Zoe on that one? All right. Then the Urban Forest Master Plan group is the same group, and we haven't met again yet. I personally was really focused on that budget request work and the meetings with the council members. So I will set up some more meetings with the group to do some work going forward in that area. And our goal with that group is, again, to sort of draft a, what would a call for proposals look like in terms of the Urban Forest Master Plan? What would the scope of work be? So that when the funding comes through, we are ready for that to move forward. And if it does not, then we could perhaps look at ways to chip away at some of the pieces. So again, anything else with that group or any questions? All right. Next on the agenda under old business is the Rules and Procedures Manual update. So this has been floating around for a few months now. At this point, I was hoping we could have a vote to approve this manual. So I don't know if everybody's had a chance to take a final look, if we feel like we're ready for that step, or if not, are there questions and concerns? Go ahead, Patrick.
I'll wait and see if there are any questions, and then I'll make a motion.
Got it. Thank you. Dawn?
There's a line about the application procedures following the boards and commissions procedure, and then there's another section that talks about nominating and voting on new members and officers. And I don't know if this needs to be in there, but it's more of a procedural thing. Like how do we go from applicants to nominees and voting? So
for new members.
For new members.
So we might need to clarify that. I hadn't noticed that was in there because right now,
to me, I would have brought it up sooner. So.
No, it's okay. So we can table this because that is important, because up to this point, there really hasn't been a procedure other than basically the chair, gets input and decides, which I don't necessarily believe is the best way to make that decision. So I agree that should be addressed. So we can take a look at that. Go ahead, Patrick.
Doesn't the city put out a notice for a vacancy on a board or commission and solicit applicants?
Correct. Yeah, we get the applicants that way. So that part is set. It's the how do we decide amongst the applicant pool. There is currently not really anything written out formally in the current city boards and commissions handbook. There's not a procedure that's specific for that. So is it a vote of the members? Is it, one or two people decide, the chair and vice chair? Is it a subcommittee decision? Those are the options, but we haven't just, talked about it or decided.
Okay.
So I would recommend if everybody goes in there, it's a live Google document, so you can even just add comments right in there. If there's a pathway that you think is best or, something you want to explore, I would suggest adding a comment in there. And then before our next meeting, get a chance to go back and circle back and check, and we'll try to come together with, some sort of final version. Good. All right. Thanks, Don, for bringing that up. I'll take a look at that piece. New members. And what was the other part? New members and that was it? That was the main one?
That was it.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next on old business is the boards and commissions restructuring. And we're just keeping this on here to keep everybody up to date. But as we know, we're going to keep working until, if for whatever reason we are not a commission in the future. So the next meeting, the working group that the city is putting together to help work through some of the ideas and issues with boards and commissions restructuring is, I believe, this Thursday at noon, May 5th at noon. And you should have received, I believe Haley or Nancy sent out the link for that meeting this week as well. And there is a place in the boards and commissions restructuring page from the city to sign up for updates, and then they'll automatically send you those updates as well. So any other comments? I know I'll be going on Thursday. I've heard from several others they'll be going as well, but Don will be there. Okay. Any comments or questions? We'll obviously keep you posted. Who knows what'll happen? I imagine it'll be a long process. If they're just starting a working group, it'll take time for things to get going, but we'll keep you posted as it goes along. All right. That's it for old business. On new business, we wanted to discuss some procedural issues, but I'd actually like to table this because we're missing so many members today. I really think it's something that would benefit our entire group. So I don't know if we have to vote on that or if we just table it. I guess we could have a vote. So I would move that we table the quorum and public discourse discussion for our next meeting.
Second.
Let's go ahead and vote on that. Dawn?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Zoe?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So we'll bring that back when hopefully we have the rest of our group here next month. Dawn, go ahead.
I would encourage people to read through the two documents that are linked in the agenda too before that time.
Yes, thank you. Nancy?
I was going to ask if you wanted me to go ahead and send them out in an email, and I will do that as well. I'll send out a follow-up email with those linked as well.
That'd be wonderful. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Well, that was it for our meeting. Is there anything else before we vote to adjourn? If not, I just need a motion and a second. Go ahead, Dawn.
Sorry. I was just thinking about, even though we're not having the discussion, and I just encourage people to read through those two things. I think it's really important that each commission member read through those documents like today, if you haven't already, just as a refresher, if you've already read them. But between now and our next meeting, any communications that go out should follow those codes of ethics and decorum. So please make sure you've read those.
And I don't think it hurts to say either, avoid including a quorum of members in any communications. So the working groups are set up so that we don't have quorums. And obviously that's very intentional that we're not communicating outside of the public sphere. Ed, go ahead.
I'm going to say this. Unfortunately, a couple of the commission members that really need to hear what was just said are not here. And there's got to be some way that we can communicate that message to them. Perhaps, Nancy, when you send that email out with those 2 documents, you might also raise those 2 points.
I will.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Whenever we're ready, a motion to adjourn, but I don't want to rush it. We have plenty of time if we want to chat.
I think this is a world record for short commission meetings.
It is. All right. Is there a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
And that was Dawn at second. All right, then Dawn.
Aye.
And Ed.
Aye.
Zoe.
Aye.
Patrick. Did he? He's frozen over there. Oh well, I think that's okay, right? If you can't vote, it's considered a yes vote, right? Is that what we decide in the rules and procedures? There you are, Patrick. Do you vote on our adjournment? Oh, I saw him mouth it. There we go.
I read his lips. Yep. Aye.
Sorry, I momentarily got bumped from the meeting.
Ah, well, we're gonna end it anyway. So, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. And I vote aye. So that is officially the end. Thank you so much, everyone. We will meet back in June. Be on the lookout for meeting location and information. Of course, it's always possible we could go to live meetings. We don't know yet. We'll hear from the city. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.